Hello YouTube, this is Pastor Green with another Creation Science Seminar. Today we're going to be doing Part 3A, Dinosaurs in the Bible. This is going to be Section 5 of 14. You can email me at godsohman@gmail.com. Remember, this is a Creation Seminar on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell, like, and also comment. When you subscribe to my channel and click the bell, it lets you know whenever I post a new video. Liking and commenting lets YouTube know that my videos are getting seen and it's getting interactions. And by liking and commenting, I'll actually be shown a lot more so that my videos can get out. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is a map that shows you about where I live at in the United States of America. And there's some very puzzling bits of information about dinosaurs that have been discovered over the years. And the question is, how does it fit? Some people have more information about dinosaurs than others, but the question is, are they getting the picture right? When you put the pieces together, it's possible to still get the information wrong. As you can see in this puzzle, they put all the pieces together, but the picture doesn't look right. What's the truth about dinosaurs? Well, there's basically two basic theories about dinosaurs. The first one is the creation timeline. It simply says about 6,000 years ago there was the creation. About 4,400 years ago there was a flood. Jesus was born about 2,000 years ago, and now we're living in the time of the Gentiles. And soon, God's going to come back and He's going to judge this world. And there's also the evolutionist timeline, where 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang. 4.6 billion years ago, Earth formed. About 3 billion years ago, life evolves. And then about 3 million years ago, man evolved. This article right here says that no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. Does he know that? Did he ask you? I know he didn't ask me, so how can he possibly say that no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur if he hasn't asked every single human being? The Bible says very clearly, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Exodus 20:11 it says, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is." And if God made the heavens, that means He created everything from the stars to the planets. The earth, everything here on land He created. The sea, which is everything in the water, and all that in them is. So anything from our universe all the way up into the depths of the earth, everything God created. So it means that Adam must have seen dinosaurs if he created everything in 6 days. In Seminar Part 2, we explain the Garden of Eden. The start of day 2 is on Genesis 1:6. This is, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." So as I said in my other seminars, there was a canopy of water overhead, which was probably an ice layer, probably about a 2 to 3 inches thick, which is about the thickness of 3 fingers. And then under the earth, there was actually water. Psalms 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and all that dwell therein. For He has founded upon the seas, He established it upon the floods." So it's saying that they put the earth on top of the water. Psalms 33:7 says, "He layeth the depths in storehouses." Psalms 136:6 says, "To Him that stretched out the earth above the waters." So again, it's saying that He put the earth above the waters. The original creation was very different than we see today. There was a layer of water or ice above the atmosphere, and there was a layer of water underneath the Earth's crust. And you can go back to a Seminar Part 2 if you want to know more about this. So again, the creationist timeline says that 6,000 years ago there was a creation, 4,400 years ago there was a flood, Jesus was born about 2,000 years ago, and soon there's going to be a judgment. And the evolutionists say that 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang. Earth formed about 4.6 billion years ago. Life evolved about 3 billion years ago, and man evolved about 3 million years ago. So 6,000 years ago there was a creation. 4,400 years ago there was a flood. And during that time, that's the time of the dinosaurs, from the creation to the flood, because after the flood, many of the dinosaurs would have died off. And the average age before the flood was about 912 years. Today it's about 70 or 80. The biggest flying dinosaur, the biggest flying dinosaur, it was talking about the pterosaur, and it says that all reptiles grow throughout their whole entire life. Lizards never stop growing. It's very scientific that they never stop growing until they die. So if man's living to be 900 years old, and animals live to be 900 years old, they're going to be really, really big. Dinosaurs were just really big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve. So the question people ask me is, were the dinosaurs on the ark? Well, this is a article from Billy Graham, and he said, but no, Noah's Ark apparently did not have any dinosaurs. The reason is because dinosaurs and similar ancient creatures that we only know of fossils were extinct by the time of God created the ark. Billy Graham actually believes in an old Earth, and he's actually completely wrong by that. Believing in an old Earth actually completely goes against what the Bible says. It says right here, Noah's Ark apparently did not have dinosaurs because they were extinct by then. And I really hope that Noah kept the woodpeckers in a steel cage, or else he'd have a big problem on the ark. So, were the dinosaurs on the ark? So Noah was 600 when he went into the ark. And you can get this chart from drdiner.com, or you can get it from me for $5. And it's common knowledge to know that there's really, really big dinosaurs in the world, but they were babies at one point. This little book right here, it's a book called Dinosaurs Everywhere, says the Apatosaurus baby was very tiny compared to his huge, long-necked parents, but it grew quickly. In just a few weeks, it grew from the size of your pillow to the size of your bed. So Noah, being really smart, he would have took babies on the ark. But yeah, make sure you get a pink one and a blue one. That's going to be really important later. So why bring babies? Well, number one, they're smaller. The biggest dinosaur egg ever found was the same size of a football. This is an article in National Geographic talking about dinosaur eggs. It is showing you the biggest dinosaur ever found. This was the size of a football and a typical egg today. Number two, they're going to weigh less. So obviously, if you take a big dinosaur, it's going to weigh a lot more than a small dinosaur. Number three, they're going to eat less, so you're not going to need to have as much food on the ark. Number four, babies sleep a lot, so they won't need to be tended to as much. Babies are going to be tougher. I mean, any parent knows that your baby does all kind of crazy stuff, and yet it still does perfectly fine. They're just tougher creatures. And after the flood, they would have lived longer to produce more offsprings. And obviously, that's why Noah brung the animals, or brung the babies. This is an elephant and a baby elephant. As you can see, it's quite small. And I picked the elephant and the giraffe because they're some of the biggest creatures that we have. And here's a giraffe, and you can see to the right is a baby giraffe. Obviously, the big ones are big, but the small ones are small. Genesis 6:19 says, of every living thing, all flesh, two of every sort, thou shalt bring unto the ark. They took two of some animals and seven of other animals. To keep them alive with thee, they shall be male and female. Again, you have to have a pink one and a blue one. Genesis 7:14-15 says, after his kind, after their kind, after his kind, after their kind, every sort. And it separates them by saying, where is the breath of life? So you have to be able to breathe in life. Genesis 7:22 says, all whose nostrils were the breath of life, and all that was in dry land. So this is saying you have to have nostrils to breathe, and you've got to be on dry land. Insects actually breathe through spiracles in their skin. They don't actually have nostrils. They breathe through their skin. Noah did not take 339 pairs of dogs on the ark. He just took two of one kind, and over the next, probably a couple hundred years, then the dogs are going to actually speciate, and they're actually going to become the different species that we see today. Noah never saw a chihuahua in his life. A chihuahua was something from humans breeding. And Noah probably took a generic dog like Nicky here. Nicky's a Canardly. If you've ever heard of that kind of a dog, it's a breed called a Canardly. They call him a Canardly because you can hardly tell what kind it is. So it's a Canardly. You can Canardly tell. This book right here talks about the horses, and it says there was one kind of horse, and it speciated into other kind of horses. So skeptics always say, how did Noah fit millions of animals on the ark? Well, Noah didn't take millions of animals on the ark. He only took land animals, so there was no fish. He took animals that only had nostrils, so there would be no bugs. He obviously would bring babies. That's just common sense. And it's two of every kind, not two of every variety or species. You know, later on you see that God made the kinds. So he just took two of every kind of animal, and later on they're going to speciate. God told Noah how big to build a boat, so he should know how many animals were going to be on the ark. And how many animals were there? You can actually see from Creation El Neo, there's about 8,000 different kinds of animals that need to be on the ark. And Genesis 2:19 says, "Out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, that's the land animals and the birds, no fish or insects. And he brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was his name. So when Noah named the animals, he only named the beasts of the field and the birds." Skeptics say all the time that Adam could never have named all the animals in one day. Well, I talk about if there's 8,000 animals, and I talk about 300 words a minute, it only take about 26 minutes to name every animal. That's just naming one animal every second. You could do it in 2.5 hours. So it would be very easy for him to say rhinoceros, hippopotamus, chicken, rooster. You know, different animal. Obviously, chicken and rooster is the same kind, but you know, a lamb, T-Rex. It'd be really easy for him to name all the animals. You know, if you just do one every second, you could do it in two and a quarter hours. And people ask all the time, how big was the ark? Well, science says that 18 to 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, hot region that may be smaller than it appeared on the page, and the explosion called the Big Bang. They call it the Big Bang. Ooh. 4.6 million years ago, the Earth cooled and formed a rocky crust. The planet was cooled and the rocky surface was created. And as the Earth formed, the surface was similar to the surface of the Moon today. Earth's surface was hot. There was large pools of bubbling lava. You know, this chart I always thought was funny from Discover Biology. You know, if you look at the bottom right of the screen, it says in the very beginning there was no oxygen, but the rocks absorbed the oxygen. I always thought that was funny. How could there be no oxygen, but the rocks absorb it? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, you know, oceans formed as it rained on the rocks for millions of years. Again, I always ask, if there's no oxygen, how can you have water? Because obviously you need oxygen to make water. Well, you know, it rained on the rocks for millions of years, and the torrential rains create a great ocean. And the swirling of the water of the ocean is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Some of them are carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids, the chemicals of life. However, the process from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. Yeah, it's slow, it doesn't even happen. And this article says right here, life on Earth may have begun in rocks on the ocean floor. So they're saying that it rained on the rocks, and it formed soup, and the soup came alive. So evolutionists believe that we came from a rock. And this book right here says the first self-replicating system must have emerged from this organic soup. Must have emerged. Evolution timeline says that 13.7 billion years ago there was a Big Bang. And the Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago, and 3 billion years ago life appeared. So was your great-great-great-great-great-grandpa soup? Well, the Big Bang Theory says that all these things move so rapidly. It was amazing. And anybody that believes in the Big Bang has to believe that these chemicals and neutrons and cells and everything like that had to go faster than the speed of light. Because how can you go from nothing to the Big Bang in a second without these things moving faster than the speed of light? And one atheist said that there are over 300 recognized varieties of dogs a day. You want me to believe that those dogs came from just two dogs 4,400 years ago? Well, I got to say that he believes that the dogs came from a rock, so I think it's makes more sense that they came from two dogs 4,400 years ago than came from a rock. An evolution-like verse is Jeremiah 2:27. It says, saying to a rock, thou art my father, and to a stone, thou hast brought me forth. Grandpa? My mom's life verse is always Matthew 17:15. Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic and sorely vexed. Genesis 11 and 12 says, the earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all the flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence throughout them. And behold, I will destroy them of the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. So Noah built an ark. Arphaxad, which was Noah's grandson, he probably looked at him and said, Noah, how comes we're the only people in the world? You know, Shem, he lived well past the flood, and I believe that he's the one that gave Abram the stories of creation and everything else. But you know, Shem could have known Isaac. You know, Shem lived to be 600 years old. And there's many flood legends. In fact, there's 270 flood stories, many of them all over the world. You know, in Hawaii, it says long after the death of Kanahuna, the first man, the world became a wicked, terrible place to live. There was only one good man left. His name was Nunu. And he made a canoe with a house on it, and it filled it with animals, and the waters came up on the earth and killed all the people. Only Nunu and his family survived. Sounds kind of like Noah's story, doesn't it? There's a Chinese proverb that says, one ancient Chinese classic called the Hu King tells a story of Hu Hai, whom the Chinese consider the father of their civilization. The history records that Fu Hai, his wife, his 3 sons and 3 daughters escaped a great flood, and he and his family were the only people alive on the earth, and after the great flood they repopulated the world. It also sounds really close to Noah's Ark. What about the Aztec legend? It says the first world lasted about 1,716 years and was destroyed by a great flood that covered even the highest mountains. And the Bible says that the floods were above the highest mountains. The Indians of ancient Mexico said the first world lasted about 1,716 years and was destroyed by a great flood. And only one family survived. It was Cox Cox. Well, you know, the Bible says that creation was in the beginning, and the flood happened right around the year 1650. Well, 1656. So the Bible dates put the flood about 1656, and the Toltec legend's only about 60 years off. That's pretty good after 4,400 years. There's a Babylonian thing that talks about the Great Flood as well. The Atlantis story might have even been a flood legend. To Noah, the entire beautiful world sank beneath the waves. I mean, why would there be this civilization under the water? Well, could it be possible that the civilization was a great nation, and after the flood, the waters rose up and was actually covering this great nation? It says that the Noah's Ark landed on the mountains of Ararat. There's actually stories talking about this must be Noah's Ark right here. Noah's boat was right at this spot. And there's actually little signs on the street telling you exactly how to get there. Genesis 8:4 says, and the ark rested on the 7th month upon the mountains of Ararat. Mountains, plural. Not just mountain, the mountains, plural. So it could be any of those mountains around there. There's actually 4 theories about the location of Noah's Ark. Number 1, they said the ark was taken apart and the lumber was used for buildings. 2, it says that Noah's Ark must have rotted after all these years. 3 says it's still on the top of the mountain. And 4 says it's in the valley. And many explorers have looked on Mount Ararat for the remains of Noah's Ark, but the Bible states that the ark rested upon the mountains, plural. The Hebrew manuscripts of Genesis reveals that Noah's Ark landed on the mountains of Utorai, which is the whole mountainous region of the area of eastern Turkey. This right here is Mount Ararat. And some people think this right here might be Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat. And maybe it is, but why would it be a gorge? Why would it be a gorge that was formed in the 1840s? People believe this right here might be Noah's Ark. It's a photo released on March of 06 in the northwest side of Ararat. There was actually an article in Life magazine on September 5th of 60 talking, could this possibly be Noah's Ark? See the little picture right there? It looks like a little boat. There's another picture of the boat. It's possible. I mean, look at the top here, and then after the earthquake of 78, it looks like you can actually see the ribs of it. It's very possible. There's a aerial view right there. See the picture? And some think this is Noah's Ark. In fact, I actually believe this is Noah's Ark right here. There's Ron Wyatt standing there, or looking at the boat. And Richard Reeves worked with Ron Wyatt for years, and now he directs the ministry. So this right here is showing Noah's Ark, and it's showing that it's possible over time the boat split in half, and it split, and you can see the ribs on the side now. They've actually done radar scans at the site, and they've actually found beams and everything like that in the middle of it, which could very possibly be the Ark. They've done radar scans. They found deck joists. They found rib timbers. They found all different kind of things right in this area. They've also found washers and grommets, different types of things to hold the boat together. Iron rivets are found at the Ark site. They're on display at the Wyatt Museum. This also shows you some more stuff from the book, Boat-Shaped Object on Doomsday Mountain, just different things they found there. This is really interesting here. On the side of some of the wood, you can actually see a glue substance in layers. So you have a layer of wood, glue substance, layer of wood, glue substance. And what that does is kind of like plywood. It actually makes the wood stronger. It's very possible that gopher wood is not actually a type of tree. Maybe it's a way you do things, like we call things plywood. So you can take different layers and put glue in them, switch the grain back and forth to make it stronger. And that might be what gopher wood is. Nobody really knows. Here's a picture from the White Archaeological Museum. It actually used to be a gas station, and they bought it out and turned it into a museum. And there's a great book you can buy. It's called The Boat-Shaped Object on Doomsday Mountain. And Ron Wyatt wrote the book, and his wife actually finished it for him. And there's actually stories in there about what happened. If you look at the diagrams here, it started on top of the mountain, and over time, it actually slid down the mountain. And it's showing you the little rudder right there, and the rudder's still on top of the mountain. And there's different articles in the book you can check out that just talks about why they believe this is Noah's Ark and what possibly could have happened there. And it's really interesting if you actually look at where it's at. In the very beginning area, it's a Kazan, which actually translates to the Village of Eight. And why would it be called the Village of Eight? Obviously, there was 8 people that must have landed there. And this is actually where the Ark is now. Over many years, it must have slid down the mountain with lava flows and landslides. This is the modern village of Kazan, Turkey. And the government actually says this is definitely Noah's Ark, and they put a little welcome center right next to it. There's the welcome center. And the government says this is the Ark, and they put a visitor center there because they really believe this obviously is where the Ark is. And this magazine has published at least 2 articles claiming this is not the Ark. They say they study the claims very carefully, and this is that they recommend you study the evidence for yourself and give Ron Wyatt's ministry a defense to defend itself against the charges before you decide what you believe. I'm not positive the evidence for the site being the real Ark, but it looks really convincing to me. And the Bible says in Genesis 6:15, the length of the Ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height 30 cubits. And people ask all the time, what's a cubit? And it's basically the distance between your elbow to the tip of your finger. And later on in time, they actually standardized it. So you have the Babylonian cubit, you have the rural cubit, the Egyptian cubit, and the Hebrew cubit. So the Egyptian cubit was about 20.65 inches. And if you look at this, the area is about 315 feet, which would be about 300 Egyptian cubits, which is what the Bible says Noah's Ark is supposed to be. And this is a picture of Noah's Ark compared to the Titanic. Obviously, Noah's Ark's on top, the Titanic's below it. And the bottom picture shows you a patasaur, an elephant, and a human, just to give you an idea of what it would look like. So a Noah's Ark is 300 rural cubits, which is about 315 feet, which would be well over a football field. They've also found at the Village of Eight a lot of these anchor stones. They found these anchor stones, which many people used to actually build and put on the side of their boats. They're gigantic anchor stones, and they're found all over the place where the Village of Eight is. They have curved holes drilled through the top, and the bigger rocks have even bigger holes. And they have to be curved holes because if they're not, these waves so much they'd actually break the ropes that are holding it in place. And during the drought of the late 90s and early 2000s, the Sea Gallery that dropped way below normal sea levels, exposing a whole bunch of small anchor stones all over the century from different boats that were there. They actually call the anchor the House of Anchor Stones. So the ark landed on the top there. The ropes were taken off of the anchor stones. And over the next 4,400 years, the ark drifted here down to the bottom through different things like lava flows and mudslides and things like that. And there's actually articles talking about the rope holes and the anchor stones, just places where you put your rope at, and they got to be smooth, or else, like I said, it's gonna break your ropes. And they're actually called drought stones. Many ships back in ancient times used to actually use these. And what it would do is it would keep you in line with the waves. So as the winds would blow, these would weigh down the ship, and you'd actually follow the waves. This is just an artistic rendition of what the anchor stones could have possibly looked like on the boat. And somebody wrote to Dr. Hovind and said, "I heard your seminar about Noah's Ark having big rocks hanging over the side. You're so dumb. Don't you know that if it had rocks hanging on the boat, it would slow them down?" Well, the question is, where was the boat going? I mean, obviously, where, the boat's not going anywhere; it's just floating around. A former preacher turned atheist said Noah's Ark could not float because a six-master over 300 feet, over 300 feet long, had not been able to sail due to continued leaks from the sails. Well, I beg to differ that they wouldn't have any sails because it's just there to float. And the sails would twist the ship, but it wouldn't have sails because it was just meant to float. It wasn't going anywhere. Josephus in his book, he actually said that the Armenians call the spot the landing place, and they show its remains to the day. So it's saying that back in Josephus' time, they knew about Noah's Ark, and this is the local people called it the landing place. Some scoffers have said that a ship over 300 feet long would bend and break over the waves because how big it was. But that's not true if you had a moon pool. A moon pool would have actually prevented the boat from breaking in half because the water couldn't actually fold it because the water would just go up to the moon pool and even it out. And a moon pool would provide a lot of different things. Number one, it would give a stress relief for a long ship. That way the boat wouldn't break. It also give it air circulation. So every time you hit a wave, fresh air would get pumped up from the bottom. It would make the heavy fresh air. And fresh air is good when you have all these animals doing their personal business in the boat. And you'd also have a place to dump all the refuge. Anytime the animals go to the bathroom, you could just push it right down to the moon pool, and it wouldn't affect the people in the boat because you could just put it right back in the water. And this right here is just showing you what a moon pool would look like. And if the Bible's true, and man lived with dinosaurs before the flood, what happened to the dinosaurs? And after they got off the boat? This right here is talking about possibly it was a meteor impact that killed the dinosaurs. This guy right here says the dinosaurs killed themselves with their own flatulence. There was so much methane that it produced a greenhouse gas, and the dinosaurs couldn't stand the heat. But I'll tell you right now, I know exactly what killed the dinosaurs. Smoking. Smoking kills everybody. Don't smoke. It killed the dinosaurs. Right there. See, there's proof. This guy right here is talking about the dinosaurs must have went extinct through flatulence, and it's in these little kids science books. It's not even true. You're asking the wrong questions. The question is not what made them go extinct. The question is, did they go extinct? Liberals are great at getting to argue about the wrong subject. They always say, well, should creation be taught in public schools? Well, the question really is, should we even have public schools? The Constitution, 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states. It is preserved to the states respectfully and to the people. So the 10th Amendment is talking about anything not written into the Constitution is up to the states to decide. So we shouldn't have a government-run we shouldn't have a government-run school system. It should be a state-run school system. Back before the 1960s, America had true public schools. The public school system where the public really got involved. The parents decided what kind of curriculum they were going to teach their kid, and the parents actually interviewed all the teachers. The system worked from the bottom up. And after the 1960s, we got a government school system where the public rarely gets involved. The legislators determine the curriculum and they hire the teachers, and this system works from the top down. There's a great article talking about why the public schools went public. You can actually check out the article right here. It's a really, really interesting article about what happened to those schools to make them go public. But see, dinosaurs leaving the ark would have faced a brand new world with a hostile climate, and many would have died from climate changes in the first few hundred years after the flood. If you actually checked out my other videos, I think it's Seminar 2B, where we talk about what happened. It talks about how the Apatosaurus, one of the biggest animals that ever lived, had nostrils about the same size of a horse. And if you get rid of the if you got rid of the canopy, you'd have a lot less oxygen, and so it'd be harder for the animals to actually breathe. Again, the average age before the flood was about 912 years. Today it's about 80 to 70 to 80 years. They lived about 900 years before the flood. After the flood, they lived about 400 years. And then it drops down to 200, and then down to 100. And like I said, today we're lucky to live past 80. So the dinosaurs had two problems after the flood. Many dinosaurs died after the flood due to climate changes. And the second problem was even worse. People hunted them. There's thousands of legends about people killing or seeing dragons. The word dinosaur was invented by Sir Richard Owens in 1841. Before that time, all dinosaurs were called dragons. And even in 1891, the word dinosaur was still not in the American dictionary. In Deuteronomy 32:33, it says, "Their wine is a poison of dragons." Psalm 74:13 says, "Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters." Dragons are actually mentioned 34 times in the Bible. And in 1946, the word dragon, the first definition says now rare. Why would it say now rare if people never saw them before? The human population chart says that right around the 1600s, there was less than 1 billion people in the world. And anybody knows that if you had a bunch of problems, and you said, "Hey, we got a bear population. You're allowed to kill bears." Every single person with a gun is going to go out there and kill the bear because they want to get their picture on the cover of the newspaper saying, "Billy Bob just killed this big old bear. Look how great he is." And so for many years, you always had these people called knights, and their job was to go out there and rid all the bad things, the bad guys, and also the dinosaurs. Many killed most of the dinosaurs for meat because they're a menace. To be a hero, you got to save the village from the dragon. They got to prove that they're superiority. They got to prove they're the best. The competition for land and medical purposes. There's a story about Gilgamesh slaying a dragon. There's a Chinese legend talking about the Chinese man named Yu, and after the Great Flood, Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. He built channels to drain the waters off the sea, and he helped make the land livable again. Many snakes and dragons were driven from the marshlands when Yu created new farmlands. And why would the Chinese zodiacs have 11 real animals and one fake animal? Anybody ever thought about that? And there's actually slate palettes from showing the first pharaoh of Egypt, and it's got two long-necked dinosaurs on it. Why would people put dinosaurs on their artwork if they've never seen a real one? Here's a replica of that same slate, and you can see right there in the middle, there's two long-necked dinosaurs on it. Why would they have dinosaurs if they didn't even exactly exist? There's another slate plate here showing two very long-necked creatures. Here's a long-necked creature found in a hippo tusk. Here's two long-necked creatures on a cylinder seal. The cylinder seal is something that you just roll across the clay or wax, and it shows you what picture it is. Isaiah 14:29 talks about a fiery flying serpent. The famous Greek historian Herodotus said, "I went to a certain place in Arabia, almost exactly opposite of the city of Buto, to make inquiries concerning these winged serpents." On my arrival, I saw the backbones and ribs of serpents in such numbers as would be impossible to describe. The winged serpent is shaped like a water snake. Its wings are not feathered, but resembles very closely to that of the bat. The ribs were a multitude of heaps, some great and some small, and some middle-sized. The place where the bones lies at the entrance of a narrow gorge between steep mountains, which there open upon a spacious plain communicating with the great plains of Egypt. The story goes that, without the spring of the winged snakes come flying from Arabia towards Egypt, but are met in this gorge by a bird named the ibis, who forbid their entrance and destroys them all. So Herodotus is saying that there was these giant snake-like creatures that had wings, and they tried to get them into town, and this bird called the ibis would actually kill them all. This is a story by Josephus. This is when the ground was difficult, he passed over because the multitude of serpents, which had produced in vast numbers, and indeed a singular in some of the most productions, which other countries do not breed. And yet such is worse than others in power and mischief, but an unusual fierceness of sight, some of which are ascended out of the ground unseen and also fly in the air, and they come upon men in unawareness and do them a mischief. So this is saying that these serpent-like creatures can fly in the air. Josephus also said, Moses invented a wonderful stratagem to preserve the army safe and without hurt. He made baskets like unto the ark of siege and filled them with ibis, and carried them along them, which animal the greatest enemy of the serpent imaginable. They fly from them, and they come near, and as they fly they are caught and devoured by them. And if it were done by the hearts, but the ibis are tame creatures, and only the animals of the serpent-like kind. But about these ibis I say no more at present. So Josephus is saying that they would take these ibis, and they would actually take them with them, because they were afraid of these serpent-like creatures that can fly. It says, since the Greeks themselves were not inadequate with this sort of bird, as soon therefore as Moses was come to the land, which were the brethren of these serpents, he let loose the ibis, and by their means repelled the serpent-like kind, and used them for his assistance before the army came upon that ground. And when he had therefore proceeded thus to his journey, he came upon the Ethiopians before they expected them, and battling joined with them and beat them. And this is a article from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It says AD 793. This year came dreadful forewarnings to the land of the Northumbrians, terrifying the people most hopefully. These were immense sheets of light rushing through the air, and whirlwinds, and fiery dragons flying across the firmament. So this is saying that there's some fiery dragons flying around up there in the air. You know, Marduk, the chief god of the Babylonians, he actually rode on the back of a dragon. In Job 41:19, it talks about Leviathan. And it says, at Leviathan's mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. And I've never seen a lizard that had sparks of fire come out of their mouth. But then it says, out of his nostrils blow a smoke, and has a seething pot of cauldron. So it's saying this thing had fire, and out of his nose goes smoke. And again, I've never seen a lizard do that. But I have seen some Baptist preachers do that. Job 41:21 says, his breath kindles coals and flames go out of his mouth. And I'm going to be doing a story about Leviathan to kind of go more into detail of this. Daniel 14:22 isn't in the traditional Bible, but it is in the Catholic Bible. And it says there was a great dragon in that place. The Babylonians worshipped him. And the king said to Daniel, behold, thou canst not say that this is not a living God. Adore him thereof. So the king's telling Daniel, this dragon is a god. You need to worship him. And Daniel said, I adore the Lord my God, for he is a living God, but that thing is no living God. But give me leave, which is permission, O king, and I will kill this dragon, without a sword or a club. And the king says, I give you leave. So basically Daniel's saying, I'm going to prove this isn't a god, and I'm going to kill it, and I'm not going to use a club, and I'm not going to use a sword. I'm going to show you he's not a god. And so Daniel took pitch and fat and hair, and he boiled them together, and he made lumps, and he put them in the dragon's mouth, and the dragon busted asunder. They didn't have rotor. And then Daniel 1:4, it talks about how when the Babylonians came, they took kids that were well favored, they were smart, and they understood science. So what Daniel did is he took pitch and fat and hair and he boiled them together. Pitch is sticky, fat tastes good, and hair can't be digested. So when you mix them all together, you had something salty that the dinosaur wanted to eat. And so when he ate it, the hair would get stuck in his stomach and he would burst asunder. And like I said, they didn't have Roto-Rooter back then, so he burst asunder. You know, Saddam Hussein said that he's actually the son of the great Nebuchadnezzar. And he actually said basically that he was his son and he was going to take over his place. You know, it's funny because Saddam Hussein is the Irish dictator. And I've been told that Saddam means prince, but Saddam means the horse's rear end. And Bush used to always call him Saddam Hussein. So he's basically calling him a horse's rear end. But Saddam Hussein actually thought that he was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. And this is actually a coin showing that he thinks he thinks that he's related to him. And they actually found Babylon underneath the sand. And this is the remains of the Ishtar gates in Babylon. And it's really interesting. It's an ancient city, and it was rebuilt. Saddam Hussein actually rebuilt this area. And they actually put inscriptions about every 10 feet. And this is, I am Saddam Hussein. I rebuilt Babylon the Great. I am the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. Now, about every 10 feet, you can see that. And on the walls, there was dragons and lions all over the walls. There's a lion right there. There's the dragon. And this right here shows you a American soldier, and you can actually see on the wall those little dragons. And this Star Gate from Babylon showed lions and dragons, and this actually is in the museum in Berlin. This is actually just a model showing you what it looked like. And it's just basically showing that people knew about dinosaurs back in 600 BC, and they put them on their walls. This is just a picture of it, showing you the lions and the dinosaur. Alexander the Great reported that when he conquered parts of what is now India in 326 BC, that his soldiers were scared by the great dragons that lived in the caves. This is a Roman mosaic showing two long-necked dragons. You see them right there? That's what I call necking. This right here is it's a mosaic on the wall in Palestron. And if you look at that top corner there, it shows you some kind of it looks like a dinosaur or a dragon, and people are attacking them. And St. George has been told that he killed a dragon, and he was actually martyred for his faith. He is a patron saint of England and Portugal. Here's a thing right here showing some type of a serpent eating an elephant. Beowulf said that he slew many dragons and he killed them. This right here is actually Beowulf. It's written in English, and as you can see on there, there's really nothing you can read. The only word I can read up there is that top corner where it says "duh." But the story of Beowulf killing Grendel the dragon, it said he pulled off one of his arms, and the creature fell to death. Or here's a Babylonian cylinder showing a man apparently ripping off the arm of a dragon. It's actually in the book called After the Flood by Bill Cooper. It is actually really interesting things. I don't know if you ever saw these things. They're called gargoyles. And according to the myth, in the 7th century, there was a dragon named Gargoyle, which literally means throat. And he rose out of the waters in this river in France. And unlike the typical dragons in mythology, this one didn't breathe fire. He was a water dragon. And he proceeded to waste the countryside around Paris by drowning in it. And there was an archbishop that actually came out there to stop the beast. When he confronted the monster, the good saint formed a cross with his 2 index fingers and a tamed gargoyle, and the dragon was led back to Paris, where it was slain and burned. But they kept the head and they put it on the side of a building. So now, anytime you go to places like France or England, you're going to see those little gargoyles on the side of the building to basically commemorate this event. And people have it all over the place in England and France and stuff like that. In 900 AD, there was an Irish writer. He talked about an animal with iron nails on his tails and on his head, similar to a horse. And said he had thick legs and strong claws. That sounds kind of like a stegosaurus to me. This is a woodcutting of a dragon swallowing a man. You can actually see in the book Vikings by Tony Allen. Viking ships all the time had dragons, and that's back in 1000 AD before we even knew about dinosaurs. Many Viking ships had dragons on the front of them, as you can see right here in this picture. That's also the book After the Flood by Bill Cooper. Siegfried slaying the dragon Fafnir. According to Norse legends, the dragon guarded a treasure. This right here is inside a museum in Hungary, and it's showing dinosaurs on it as well. Why would people put dinosaurs on their castle walls if they've never seen a real one? This right here is a crest that shows a dragon on the top of it. Marco Polo lived in China for 17 years, right around 1271 AD, and he reported that the emperor raised dragons to pull chariots to his parades. And I'm pretty sure he said that because the emperor must have raised dragons to pull chariots at his parades. In 61, the emperor appointed the post of a rural dragon feeder. Books even tell of Chinese families raising dragons using their blood for medicines. You all the time hear in different ancient Chinese medicine, they wanted bones of dragons and bloods of dragons and scales of dragons. And why would the emperor have a job opening for a rural dragon feeder if they didn't have dragons to feed? This right here shows you a stone in a castle that shows you a dragon supporting a column. This is a brass carving of dinosaurs in the tomb of Richard Bell, a 15th century cathedral. Why would people put dinosaurs on their tombs if they've never seen a real one? You can see the little dragons right there, dinosaurs. This right here is another door frame. It shows you a big serpent. This right here is a coin from 1584 showing a man slaying a dragon. This is a coin from 1606 showing a man slaying a dragon. This is a coin from 1606 showing a man slaying a dragon. You can see the dragons in the bottom there. The human population chart in the 1600s was about 500 million. But yet people said they saw dragons all the time. Another coin from 1621, 1622 showing a man slaying a dragon. This is a Russian medallion showing a man slaying a dragon. This is a Bulgarian postage stamp showing a man trying to kill a dragon. This is the crest of Lithuania showing a man killing a dragon. The city is a city in France was renamed in honor of the dragon slain there. It was described as being bigger than an ox and having a long, short, pointed horns on its head, killing a triceratops. This is an Indian pictograph from the Grand Canyon showing a dinosaur. There's a outline of the animal, and there's a dinosaur next to it. It right there shows you the carving on the cave of the Grand Canyon. And they actually wrote a book about the this finding at the Grand Canyon. There's another animal they found on the side there. This right here is a discovery regarding prehistoric man and the scientific expedition of the Grand Canyon in northern Arizona. This is the fact that some prehistoric man in this pictograph of a dinosaur on the walls of this canyon upsets completely all of the theories regarding the antiquity of man. Facts are stubborn and immutable things. If theories don't square with the facts, then the theories must change so the facts remain. So this guy's pretty much saying if this really is a dinosaur, it completely destroys all the beliefs that we have about dinosaurs not living with man. And then it said about a year ago, a photographer of the dinosaur was shown to a scientist of natural repute, and he actually was specializing in dinosaurs. He said, "It is not a dinosaur. It is impossible, because we know that dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man appeared on Earth." So this guy's saying, even though it looks like a dinosaur, it can't be, because we already know that dinosaurs and man didn't live together. That's right. This book right here is talking about how dinosaurs died over 65 million years ago. This right here talks about this Tyrannosaurus Rex that died over 65 million years ago. In 1777, George Bluffin said the Earth was about 70,000 years old. In 1905, the age of the Earth was officially 2 billion years old. The Minneapolis Tribune on August of '69 said the official age was 3.5 billion years ago. Today, students are taught that it's 4.6 billion years old. And that means the Earth has been getting older at the rate of about 21 million years per year over the past 220 years. That's 40 years a minute. This actually here is a carving on the wall over here in Utah, and it shows you what looks like a patasaur. This is a artist rendition of what the thing would probably look like. This is a Aboriginal cave painting found in Australia that looks like a dinosaur. This is a rock carving in Canada. Looks like a dinosaur. And this is that same thing with a person next to it. This right here looks like a plesiosaurus type creature, and it's reported by the Aboriginals of the far part of Australia. And it looks like a plesiosaur swallowed a guy. You can see him in his belly, and all of his friends are going to try to kill it. There's a person of the. This guy says no human being has ever seen a dinosaur. So the question is, why do they carve it on their cliff walls? You know, in Ica, Peru, there's these things called Inca stones. It's the most rigid desert in the world. There's actually white lines found on the desert floor of Peru. And there's actually giant images. When you actually zoom out of these white lines, you see different photos. Like there's the spider photos that you can see right there. There's actually all these different animals you can see if you actually look at the top, all over the place in Ica, Peru. The spider drawing is about 150 feet tall, and it has about 1.5 miles of line. So how could these ancient people know about that if they actually weren't smarter than us? It's actually funny that they have this little long leg on the bottom. This actually is a picture of a type of spider. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's blind, and it's found about 1,000 miles away in the caves of Arizona. It's actually a blind spider, and during mating season, that particular leg actually gets bigger, and that's where it shares its genetic information. So how can these people have been able to see a 1/8 inch blind spider with a foot that's long? You know, the Spanish conquistadors mentioned there were stones with strange creatures on them in Ica, Peru. This right here is Dennis Swift. He lives in Oregon, and he's one of the person that talks about Inca stones the most. He's actually really, really intelligent when it comes to these Inca stones. And a lot of these Inca stones have dinosaurs on them. Dennis Swift goes down to Peru every year and gets some of these stones. There's actually a story about the burial stones. It's called The Message of the Engraved Stones of Ica. And this right here is an Inca stone showing brain surgery. These are some of the tools they found around where the Inca stones were. These are some stones showing about heart surgery. They must have knew about amputation because this guy's missing a leg. Dr. Carabra is the person that owns the most Inca stones in the world right now. He's got a lot of them. Dr. Ball has bought 2 of the stones, and some of them are really interesting when you see people and dinosaurs living together. This right here looks like it's a triceratops. Here's a wall right here of different carvings with dinosaurs on it. This is another carving. This is from the Cherokee Indians found in North Carolina. This right here looks like it's a dinosaur trying to grab a man. This looks like a dinosaur cutting off, or a person cutting the head off a dinosaur. This right here looks like somebody's trying to stab a dinosaur. This shows you man and dinosaur together. There's like a T-Rex right there. This is another one of the stones showing a dinosaur. As you can see, the dinosaur is biting a person's leg on the bottom right there. This right here looks like a man petting a dinosaur. This right here is another little dinosaur. Looks like these 3 dinosaurs right there, as you can see. And all these dinosaurs have a circle pattern on their skin. And it's really interesting that they put circles on these dinosaurs. See, there's another triceratops with circles on the side there. Well, this is actually a fossilized dinosaur skin right there on the bottom. And it shows you rosea patterns. There's circles all over the skin. You see it right there? The dinosaur skin is actually found with having circles all over it. See, dinosaur skin with circles on it. They've actually found tissue, soft tissue inside dinosaur bones. It's another picture of a dinosaur right here. This looks like a guy riding a dinosaur. This is actually found. It's really interesting. It's one of about 11,000 of this guy's dinosaur or the Inca stone collection he has. This looks like a man petting a dinosaur. This looks like a big dinosaur. There's actually an Incan mummy, and they have textiles around her scarf. And the textiles around her scarf show some type of a dinosaur. See that right there? That's what it actually looks like right there when you actually zoom into it. And these really interesting that they put dinosaurs on their clothes. See right there? See right there? A good fabric today has about 80 to 100 threads per inch. Parachutes have about 185 to 200, but these fabrics have over 696 threads per inch. They're actually fantastic designs. Dennis Swift went to the remote jungles of Cambodia to the temple, and he actually saw on the temple wall they actually have these really interesting designs, and one of them looks like a pterodactyl or a stegosaurus or something. There's a book actually called The Mysteries of Kambaro. It's really interesting to read. It says, did dinosaurs survive until recently? And these dinosaurs that they found range between 3 to 6 feet long, and they're made of ceramic, jade, stone, and obsidian, and they're buried about 20 to 40 per pit. And basically, the idea that they believe is that they were there to avoid being captured by the Spanish in the 1600s. There's actually dinosaurs of all different shapes and sizes. They're really interesting. There's over 56,500 ceramic figures that all look like dinosaurs. And here's some more Ica stones that they found around these dinosaurs and these different carvings. So again, no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. But why did they carve them on their rocks and weave them into their fabrics? There's actually a story about a man who found a little small dinosaur while he was taking his cows out. And it says that he obtained the body of a dead dragon that the farmer had recently killed and had mounted in a museum for display. And it looked just like this type of dinosaur right here. This is an artifact shown. It looks like it's a pterodactyl with his wings folded on the side. This is somebody that took a picture of a looks like a pterodactyl on the wall and said, what do you guys think about it? They took a chalk and did the outline of what it looks like. There's actually a lot of Roman artifacts that are found in Arizona. And one of the artifacts is this really cool sword. Columbus was not the first white person to cross the ocean. The Romans were here way before that. In fact, this story talks about how many people crossed the Atlantic Ocean before Columbus. There's actually a stone they found that's got the 10 Commandments on a large boulder. It's the Las Lamas Dorado stone. It's an 80 to 100 ton stone. It's got the 10 Commandments on it. And that sword I was telling you about has a little dinosaur on the side of it. You can actually see it in this little artist rendition of what the sword looks like. You can barely see it on here, but you can kind of see the outline of that dinosaur on the bottom there. It's a really small little knife. It's in a museum. And it's really interesting because, back in the 1500s, all the sailing ships were steam and gas powered. All of them were wind powered with sails. And around the 1900s, they started getting steam and gas powered ships. And steam and gas powered are very, very noisy, and that would scare off animals before we got too close to them. But there was ancient legends all the time of these animals they found in the water. There's all these articles about how people have found different animals like serpents and giant squids, and we don't see them anymore. It's probably because they make too much noise in the water. This is a Bangkok City Thai restaurant that's got a dragon on the front of it. You can see right there. There's all these different stories about sea monsters. This right here is a story that says that as for other sea monsters, none of them have been seen by us or any of our time, and yet I've heard say the most dreadful monster that showed itself on the surface of the waters in the year 1734. This monster was so huge of size that coming out of the water, its head reached as high as the mast. His body was as bulky as a ship and was about 3 or 4 times as long. It had a long pointed snout and sprouted like a whalefish, with broad paws, and the body seemed covered with shell work, its skin very rough and uneven, and the under parts of his body were shaped like a huge serpent, and it divided under the waters, and plunged backwards to the sea, and so raised his tail aloft, which seemed the whole ship's length distant from the bulkiest part of the body. And this right here is a story about the great New England sea serpent. There's sea monster sightings all over the world. This is a sea monster sighting in 1755. This is a article. This is a person who talked about they saw a 60-foot sea monster in 1848. In the 1950s, there was a whaling ship called the Montezuela out of New Bedford. And this is they killed a 103-foot sea monster on the Pacific Ocean. The sailors said it had 2 blowholes, 4 swim fins, an alligator-like head, and 94 very sharp teeth. The passing ship stopped and saw the creature as the crew was cutting it up. They even bought some barrels of sea serpent oil before sailing home to tell the story. The Montezuela sailed in and searched for whales and was never heard of again. Then years later, the name board of the Montezuela was found on this island. It was on April of 1907, while chief officer of the command was Arthur Henry Roston. He sighted off the Irish coast near Cork a long-necked object which he stretched as it moved, turning his head from side to side. Roston stated at the time that what he saw and sketched was a sea serpent. However unimaginative the young officer may have been, it did not interfere with his progress in the company's service. And they basically are saying that because this guy saw a sea serpent, he must have been crazy, which is just funny, you know. But many different people have talked about sea monsters. This says the steamer sank quickly as it had gone about 25 seconds, and there was a violent explosion. A little later, pieces of wreckage, and amongst them a giant sea animal was shot out of the water. It was about 60 feet long, and this is from a U-boat captain. There's stories of giant octopuses. And you've actually heard, I'm sure, a lot of different stories about different things like giant octopuses. This right here is was basically a giant octopus remains on the beach. This right here talks about an octopus that was 20 feet across and it weighed about 5 tons. The whale was killed near Seattle, and it had a 150-foot octopus arm in its stomach. You know, whales love to eat octopus, and if you ever find a throwed up octopus, it's very, very valuable. It's what they use to make perfume. But there's stories all over the world about a giant squid. This right here is in 1966. A nation oceanography vessel observed an encounter between a giant squid and a sperm whale. The Peabody Museum has a picture of a giant squid inside of it, a little model. This article here talks about how they found this giant squid near Antarctica. This is a baby giant squid from New Zealand. You can see how small the baby was. It said it was 80 feet long and it was a baby. And it talks about how this article was found, and his tentacles were around 15 to 18 yards. It's just an article. This is actually a live picture of a giant squid in the water. And if this is all true about dinosaurs living with man, the question is, are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? There's actually a lot of stories about dinosaurs in the Bible. They're called dragons. In the book of Job, it talks about 2 of them, actually. It talks about Behemoth and Leviathan. Job 1:1 says there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and he's one that feared God and hated evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance were also 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels and 5,000 yoke of oxen and 500 she-asses, and a very great household, that this man was great in all the man of the east. See, Job was probably written shortly after the flood, because he didn't live to be 900. It said Job had 10 grown children, and all of them died. Then he had 10 more children, and he saw his great-grandchildren from them. Job 42:16 says, and after all this, Job lived 140 years, and he saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So, since he lived to be 140 years after this, he must have been around 400 years old. So he was probably sometime right after the flood. This is in Job 1:14-15. It says, there came a messenger, and pretty much it said that everything that he had died. Then later it talks about how they burned up his sheep, and people took his camels, and all his sons and daughters were killed by a great wind. And Job said, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, but blessed be the name of the Lord. He still honored God regardless. And then it said, Job 2:7, Satan went forth the presence of the Lord, and he smote Job with sore boils, so he got punished even more. And his wife even told him, curse God and die. In Ephesians 5:33, it says the wife's supposed to reverence her husband. Job 2:10 it says, but he said unto her, thou speakest of one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good with the hand of God, and shall we not also receive evil? And all this, Job never sinned. And then, Job's 4 friends came to visit him. And one of his friends was actually Bildad the Shuhite. Bildad the Shuhite's the shortest man in the Bible? So he's a Shuhite. But his 4 friends came to visit him, and they basically wanted to figure out exactly what's going on with him. So Eliphaz, the Temanite, asked Job and said, if we were assuaged to communicate with thee, to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? But who can withhold himself from speaking? Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent. So Eliphaz is saying, you must have sinned because, people don't get in trouble, people don't get hurt if they're innocent. It's always funny how people think that, well, you must have done something and bad things happen to you. These aren't gallstones, these are tithes and offerings. Job 31:35, Job's trying to talk to God, and he says, I want the Almighty to answer me. Romans 8:28 says, we know that all things work together for good, that them who love God, for them that are called according to his purposes. Have you ever been hungry? How about a cup of flour? What about a tablespoon of salt? How about eating a tablespoon of baking soda? How about a half a cup of Crisco? How about a cup of buttermilk? You can mix them all together, and you can make biscuits. See, each individual thing might not seem like a great thing, but if you mix them all together, you can get something good out of it. Romans 8:28 says, we all know that all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purposes. Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? But see, in Job 38:1, the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind. If a tornado starts talking to you, you should probably pay attention. God said, who is that darketh counsel with words without knowledge? You don't want to get your Bible doctrine from the book of Job, because the whole entire book, people are just telling Job really bad things. But in Job 38:3, God starts talking to Job, and he said, gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where was there when I laid the foundation of the earth? 1 Chronicles 28:9 says, the Lord searches all hearts and understands all imaginations of your thoughts. So basically saying that God knows everything you even think. Psalms 94:11 says, God knows the thoughts of man, and they are vanity. Isaiah 66:18 says, I know their works and their thoughts. Luke 11:17 says, Jesus knowing their thoughts. And basically, God kept answering Job. He said, "Who had laid the measures thereof?" You know, Job 38:16 it says, "Has thou entered into the springs of the sea?" And we just found out there's actually springs in the sea, and that was actually discovered by modern science in 1977. Bible back in 1600s already talked about this. Job 38:19. Where is the way with light dwelleth? You know that light's actually in a way? And as for darkness, where is the place thereof? You know darkness is stored in a place? 1 Thessalonians 5:5 says, "We are the children of the light, and we're the children of the day. We are not of the night, we are not of darkness." Matthew 16:18, this is, I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I'll build the church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So God's saying that, you're Peter, you're a small rock, but I'm Petra, I'm a big rock. And the gates of hell could not prevail against me because, I'm God. Job 38:24. This is, by the way, the light parted and was scattereth the east wind upon the earth. Do you know that the wind is actually moved around by light? It's actually scientific. Canst thou send lightning? That's interesting. Lightning is amazing. Aren't you glad that God has not given you the power to strike people with lightning? It says, Canst thou send lightning that they may go and say unto thee, here we are? Do you know words can be sent through electricity? Radio, email, telephone, TV. God's saying right here in Job 38:35 that lightning can say to you, here I am. In Job 40:8-9, you just keep asking Job questions. He actually asked him about 84 questions in the book of Job. It's like having your kid. Hey, Dad, I think I should be allowed to stay out until 4 in the morning with my friends. I mean, I am 10. I should be able to stay out with my friends in the morning. I'm 10 now. Second Opinions 4:7 it says, whoever payeth the bills maketh the rules. And Second Opinions 5:9 says, it's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. Job, God's talking to Job, and he says, behold now behemoth, which I made. He eateth grass like an ox. And if you look at some of these Bible verses, it'll say in the footnotes, well, that must be an elephant or a hippo, because, obviously they're a big animal and they eat grass. But I think you're talking about the Apatosaurus. The one of these big old dinosaurs. The Apatosaur has longer back legs. The Brontosaurus has longer front legs. The Cenosaur just has a big butt. The Cetosaur has a big butt. Of course, there's also the Blontosaurus. That one you got to talk really slowly to. But Job 40:15 says, behold now behemoth, which I made. He eats grass like an ox. His strength is in his loins, and the force is in the navel of his belly, which means that he has big feet and big belly. Elephants have a big belly. Hippopotamuses have a big belly. Apatosauruses have a big belly. That guy's got a big belly. So does he. It says he moveth his tail like a cedar. I don't think that's a big cedar. What do you think about that? I don't think that's a big cedar. Hippopotamuses, that doesn't look like a very big cedar. Not a cedar tree either. Maybe they say maybe it was the hippopotamus or the elephant. Remember, the Bible's inspired, not the footnotes. It says his bones are strong pieces of brass. His bones are like big bars of iron. It means that he has really, really big, strong bones. Well, the Bronchiosaurus, his toe bone is really big. Look at these big old legs on a Apatosaurus. There's a dinosaur footprint in Glen Rose, Texas. That's a big dinosaur with the big feet and big bones. And they said that the biggest dinosaur ever was the Ceratopston. They said he weighed about 100 tons. That's equivalent to 14 school buses. If he steps on you, you will be deeply impressed. I've actually developed a shovel. It'll help these road workers from having to hold their shovels up. There it is. It says in Job 40:19, he is the chief of the ways of God, that he makes him, can a sword approach to him? Chief, meaning the big principal thing. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword approach to him. He's saying this is the biggest creature that there is. So how big is your God? Is God big enough to tell you what you do, what to do, and you'll do it without question? What about your clothes? Can God tell you what kind of clothes you should wear? What about your hair? Can God tell you what kind of hair you should have? What about your speech? Can God tell you what you should and shouldn't say? What about what you watch on TV? Think about this for a second. What if you made a rule in your house that anytime you heard any kind of foul language, you shut the TV off for an hour? What about if you ever saw anything that was like nudity or offensive? Shut your TV off for an hour. What if somebody had violence? Shut your TV off for an hour. What if somebody did something that you don't necessarily agree with or goes against the Bible? You shut your TV off for an hour. How much TV would you guys watch every day? What about the type of music you listen to? What do you think that your guy can tell you what kind of music you should listen to? Ephesians 5:19 says, speaking to yourself in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melodies in your heart to the Lord. Genesis 1:27 says, male and female, he created them. 1 Corinthians 7:1-2 says, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Avoid fornication. Let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Proverbs 6:26 says, the adulteress I will hunt for the precious life. Britney Spears and Jason Allen Alexander, they were married for a whole 55 hours. Jennifer Lopez and Chris Judd was married for 7 months. Brandy Norwood and Robert Smith was married for 2 years. Drew Barrymore's first marriage was less than 3 months, and Tom Green was less than 6 months. And Zsa Gabor and Philippi was 1 day. Proverbs 6:26 says, for means of a whorish woman a man brought the piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Genesis 1:21 says that God created every whales and every creature that moveth. You see, Satan couldn't fool Adam about dinosaurs because Adam named them. Satan couldn't fool Noah about dinosaurs because he fed them every day. And from the flood until today, dinosaurs have slowly died off or killed by men. And now, almost all the dinosaurs are gone, and people forgot about them. So now Satan can bring up dinosaurs and try to use them to bring people away from God. Look at this book here. I can read about dinosaurs. The first sentence says, millions of years ago. How many kids are being taught this in your town? And at your taxpayer expenses. Another book here. Millions of years ago. Millions of years ago. And kids walk through museums and they're told this over and over again. Dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago. These animals, these fossils are millions of years old. And it makes me sick sometimes to see these things. I mean, even in schools, even in Sunday schools, people are talking about dinosaurs are old. Job 40:21 says, he lieth under the shade trees and the coverings of the reeds and fens, which basically means he lives in a swamp. The Lakota swamp in the Congos is about 55,000 square miles. Just to give you an idea how big that is, there's the swamp right there, and there's the United States on top of that swamp. The red states are all 55,000 square miles, and the yellow ones are just a little bit smaller than that. The Lakota swamp in Congo is 55,000 square miles, and 80% of it is unexplored. There was actually a retired pastor, a retired missionary in Ohio, and they said he had 2 pygmies in his mission in Congo, and they claimed they killed a Mukoki Abembe, which is a type of dinosaur. Dinosaurs are mentioned in the Bible as dragons. all throughout history, and it's very possible that some of them could still be alive, and we're going to cover that on 3B. This right here is a picture of a 32-foot-long creature that weighed over 4,000 pounds that they actually halted up from 9,000 feet below the coast of New Zealand. It was dead, rotting, and it smelled horrible. And after they examined the creature, they threw it back in the water. This is a drawing of what they said they found in the water. Here's a postage stamp showing a plesiosaur. You know, in California, they had this newspaper article where they showed you this great big huge creature that washed up against the water. And this is actually the picture they show you for the newspaper article. They didn't show you the rest of it. There's his head right there. There's the rest of his body. Yep, this thing washed up on the beach. There's his very, very long neck, 20-foot long neck. It says right here, my examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth, its head was large, and its neck was 20 feet long. The body is weak, and the tail is only 3 feet in length from the end of the backbone. With a bill like it possessed, it must have lived on herbage, and undoubtedly inhabited a swamp. I would call it a type of plesiosaur. Another witness says the creature was from a prehistoric age. He added his observation that his evidence was 2 short flippers, and it probably swam with his head above the water. You know, the plesiosaur is probably what this animal was. It had a 20-foot long neck. And an atheist said one time, well, this creature obviously was a whale. Well, I want to say, show me the neck on any kind of whale. And we're going to cover a lot more of dinosaurs that still might be living in the next section, Creation Seminar 3B. So we're going to summarize. God made the world. And that means he owns it. And if God owns the world, he can make the rules, like the 10 Commandments. And every one of us is guilty of breaking his rules. You know, God made the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not bear false witness. That means you shouldn't lie. Thou shalt not steal. That means don't steal anything. Psalms 5:4 says, For thou art not a God that has pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. We're guilty of breaking his rules, and we will be punished, or we must find a substitute to take our place. Jesus is willing and able to be our substitute. You know, if you died today, where would you go? Smoking or non-smoking? You're going to be dead for a very long time. All you have is that dash. You need to use it for God. You can either give it away or you can throw it away. The question is, what are you doing for heaven's sake? Are you serving God or are you serving yourself? Well, I appreciate you guys watching this video. Again, this is a YouTube creation seminar. Make sure you subscribe to my page. Click the notification bell. That way you get updates whenever I post a new video. Also, like and comment so YouTube knows that I'm getting views and they're going to show my videos more often. Thank you so much, and you guys have a great day.